going to have a really good time today. Our special guest today is Dr. Dwight Damon, President of the National Guild of Hypnotists. NGH is the oldest and largest hypnotherapy membership organization in the world. Dr. Damon began his career in hypnosis in 1947 and is uniquely qualified to guide us through a hypnotic journey spanning 5 decades. He was there when hypnosis was a struggling profession with little credibility, and there as it began to gain mainstream acceptance. This episode is called Ask Dr. Damon because we all have a rare opportunity today to ask Dr. Damon personally about how hypnosis can help ordinary, everyday people with ordinary, everyday problems.
In 1950, Dr. Damon became a founding member of the National Guild of Hypnotists, NGH, and has been a dominant force in the field of hypnotism ever since. Until his expert leadership, Guild membership has grown over 10,000 members around the world and in 63 countries. What's more, as a result of his tireless efforts to promote the highest standards of professionalism, standardized training and practices for certified hypnotists were put into practice, and all members of the Guild adhere to a very high code of ethics. Most recently, Dr. Damon published his new book, Hypnotic Recollections, The History and Development of Hypnotism as a Separate and Distinct Profession in the 20th Century. So welcome, Dr. Damon. We're pleased and honored to have you with us today.
Well, happy Wednesday.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You're out there probably in sunny California, and I'm back here in New Hampshire where it's drizzly and damp and dark. Well, it's nice of you to invite me to be on the program, and I always like to talk, I like to talk about hypnotism. Everywhere I go, as I travel around the country and to other countries, I talk to everybody about it because you did hit on our motto. The motto of the Guild is we help ordinary, everyday people with ordinary, everyday problems, and that's certainly what we do as members of the National Guild of Hypnotists. So what would you like to discuss?
Well, you are a magician and a stage show hypnotist. What experience caused you to start thinking about moving from stage hypnotism to hypnosis for therapeutic reasons?
Well, back in the day, I started in when I was a teenager, actually. I was in prep school. My family did have a talent agency, and so I was working as a professional magician when I was 13 years old. They used to bill me as New England's youngest professional magician. And when I was in college, in Emerson College in Boston, I was on my way to a fraternity rush party, and I saw a poster that said, "Learn genuine hypnotism." Well, I didn't know there was a difference between genuine hypnotism and some other kind, but it was a free lecture demonstration. And so I took a detour on my way to the frat party and went to a lecture demonstration by Dr. Rixfidel North. And I had dabbled with hypnotism in prep school, bought a book and tried to become a hypnotist by reading the book and doing what it told me to do. And I perhaps hypnotized a few people, a few of the faculty members and fellow students, but mostly I think I bored them as I read the book, and they were good sports about it. But I said, well, there's my opportunity, and having been active as an entertainer, I thought, well, that would be really nice, and so I called home and told my father I'd like to take an extracurricular course, and he said, well, what is it? And I said, well, it's a first time, and he said, I couldn't hear you. And I said, well, it's right in line with what I do and here at Emerson and all. And he said, yeah, I know, but what is it? And so I told him it was, hypnotism. And he had always been, an ardent backer of my ability to be a stage magician as a young person, and always encouraged me in doing things of that type. And so he said, well, how much is it? Well, it was only $50. And I say, only $50. Well, $50 nowadays is like, the $10 bill back then. That was 1949. And so $50 was a certain amount of money. I mean, it was an investment. And for 10 lessons. And he said, well, all right, I'll send you the money. And so that's when I got started. And in that period of time, most everybody was either a stage hypnotist or a hobbyist. They were just interested in what we call hypnologists. They were interested in the art of hypnotism. Might do a little bit here or there, at a party or something. But there were very few actual hypnotists in practice as such. They were usually psychologists who used it in their practice, but not a lot. In fact, when we formed the National Guild of Hypnotists in 1950, our membership then was probably 5 to 10% actual office hypnotists, and the rest were all stage hypnotists or hobbyists. So that's how I happened to get into it.
What was the driving force behind your decision to found the Guild in 1950? What was your vision for that?
Well, we were getting together because Dr. North had regular lectures, free lecture demonstrations, and while I was in college, I ended up becoming his right-hand man. I didn't have to pay anymore for a room at a rooming house because I went to work with him at the Hypnotism Center, and it was a large facility, an old brownstone house in a very artsy section of Boston. They were all artists, poets, dancers, and so forth in that area. A very bohemian-type place. And we had a huge lecture hall, 2 private offices for consultations, a workroom where we could assemble books and so forth, and an apartment. So and my room was one of the consultation offices that had a leather couch that I could open up into a bed. So that was part of my deal with him. I got paid so much per week plus room and board. And it was a funny thing, but every time it came time to get paid, he would say to me, well, this book came in for us to review, and it's really a very good book. And every hypnotist should have it. I would end up getting paid with a book and my room and board. But it was all right, because I still have those books, because I learned a lot from him. He was an amazing man. He was stone deaf. And the very first lecture that I went to, when I went to heading to a frat party, I wondered about this man because I couldn't figure out. I'm very good at languages, and I couldn't figure out what country he could be from because his voice was so strange. Mm-hmm. And he talks something like this, and I thought, well, he hasn't learned to speak English well yet, but it was because he couldn't hear. He had lost his hearing on a USO tour. He had been a stage hypnotist also. And with spinal meningitis, he lost his hearing. So for a person who is stone deaf, and I'm talking absolutely no hearing at all, he was an amazing hypnotist, both on stage and with private clients. So, and he made up for the lack of hearing by his drive. I learned a lot from him because it was a job where he expected, because he worked 24/7, that I would also. And so I guess I learned a very good work ethic, not only from my family, but also from Dr. North.
Don't forget to call us with your questions and comments at 1-866-613-1612, or you can email us at info@bayareahypnotherapy.com. Well, you're right there with the legends of hypnotism, the people that we talk about now and remember and reminisce about. Tell us about some of the outstanding personalities of the 40s and the 50s.
Well, I will. That's a very good comment to make. I was right there, and the guild started because a group of us met. He had the free lectures, and so I would say to our students, "Well, why don't you come over?" On another night, and being in Boston, a lot of them lived in the suburbs, and they'd come in, and we'd have sort of a get-together and practice and talk, and we usually would end up at a cafeteria a couple blocks away. And so by getting together like that, we finally said, well, we ought to make this a formal organization, and that's when we did file with the state of Massachusetts as an organization. And that's when the National Guild of Hypnotists was born. And at that time, Harry Aarons was certainly well known as well, and Rex North, and they did a big mail order business of books and folios and so forth. And they were friends, business friends. And so when we decided to start the guild, and we said, well, let's publish a magazine too, a little magazine. and just to keep up on news, because once we formed the Guild, we had a chapter in New York as well as Boston, and one out on the West Coast. And so we thought there was we would be growing. So we said, well, okay, and we asked Harry Aarons if we could borrow his mailing list, and he said, sure. He said, but you're wasting your postage stamps. Nobody's going to be interested in joining an organization of hypnotists and reading a magazine, and, it's a waste of time and money. And, of course, he was proven wrong, and then in later years, he started his own organization and also his own magazine. But I was sitting at our convention, I believe it was last year, 2 years ago, and I had three other members there, Dr. John Hughes and Professor Maurice Kershaw from up in Canada, and Arnold Levinson, Dr. Arnold Levinson. And those three were with me back in the early days when we first formed the Guild. And I said to them across the table, I said, well, I've called you fellows, so I'm writing this book. I've been spending almost 2 years putting it together, and I call you and I ask you if you remember such and such, to help refresh my memory, and you all say you don't remember anything. And so one of them, I don't remember which one, said, well, quit asking me questions like that, because I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So I guess probably I was more enthused than they were at that stage of the game, and that's why I recall all of these things so vividly. And so I guess it's a good thing, since we're about the only four left that go back that far, that I was able to recall and get it all into a book. And so we have a history of the development of our profession, in the 20th century, so since World War II, here in the United States particularly. And this is not the licensed health professionals, this is our group of hypnotists.
Right.
And it's very important. I mean, it's good to know the ancient history about the sleep temples and Mesmer and Liebald and all of those, but I think it's more important to know our contemporary history and how we have become a separate and distinct profession.
Right.
Your book is such an encyclopedia of history. I was flipping through it yesterday, kind of in amazement. It's obvious that you've probably saved every scrap of paper, every news clipping and book, and I would really encourage people out there interested in how hypnotism has developed as a practice to buy your book. It's just amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. And there are pictures and photos and clippings and so forth in there that probably nobody else has, because I did say that I'm not a hoarder. I'm a bibliophile, for one thing. I have two huge libraries, one on magic, no, actually three, and one on show business and one on hypnotism. Oh. And so I do think that we need to save those things, and I'm glad that we were able to put them into the book so that they will really be saved now for future generations. Other professions, and in the book that we're talking about, Hypnotic Recollections, I point this out, other professions started out much the way we did. In the old days, you became a doctor by riding with somebody who was a doc. He was a doc simply because he had learned by riding with somebody else, and he's setting bones and delivering babies and taking care of gunshot wounds and so forth. And medicine certainly has progressed. In fact, they say that the original Mayo, Dr. Mayo of the Mayo brothers, their great-grandfather, I guess, was a doc. He had no real formal training. And so many of the professions started out that way. You could become a lawyer by reading the law, working in somebody's law office. And so our profession really started when stage hypnotists started teaching others how to hypnotize. And there are other health professionals and licensed health professionals who use hypnosis, but many of them, for example, a physician, there's nothing that really qualifies them in their training, in their education, to be a hypnotist, because they may have a day or two in a psychology class about hypnotism, but nothing of any great substance. Whereas our people, and we're starting out with basic education. I mean, we're building and building and building. Our group was the first to have continuing education required every year, 15 hours of continuing education. We have a course of materials for our certified instructors to use, which has been really praised by many, many different boards in different states and so forth for its contents. And we keep adding to it. We keep upgrading our training all the time and our education all the time for our practitioners, because we want people who learn to be hypnotists through the National Guild of Hypnotists to learn to be competent and confident in what they do. And that way they can help ordinary everyday people with ordinary everyday problems. And so we are not stretching beyond what we should be doing. We're not turning out junior psychologists or anything like that. We're turning out consulting hypnotists, people who will consult with the public and also with licensed health professionals on a referral basis for certain cases they might like to have us work with.
And yet there were some events that helped hypnotism along to become a profession. For instance, tell us how the return of soldiers after World War II brought new credibility to hypnotism.
Well, really, yeah. Back in World War I and World War II, I don't remember World War I. I do remember World War II, and I remember exactly where I was 70 years ago on December 7th when we heard about Pearl Harbor. I don't know, I was just a kid, but I remember exactly where I was, and I asked my dad what war was and what this all meant. But anyway, back to the question. I sometimes get off the topic.
Okay.
The question again, Jim.
Yes, just a moment.
Oh, you forgot the question,
World War
too.
II.
No, I didn't forget the question. I changed pages.
We were talking about World War II veterans.
Tell us
Oh,
about
okay.
it.
All right. I'm back on the I've got it now.
All right, good.
I get enthused about these other things. But World War II, instead of shell shock, which they had previously treated and so forth, in World War II it was post-traumatic stress disorder they gave the title to. And these were veterans who had been psychologically scarred by being in a war situation. And they found at that time that in the hospitals, in the VA hospitals, that using hypnosis helped in the curing of these problems, in the treatment of these problems. And so it became more popular at that time that, well, yes, you can do a lot with hypnotism, so let's use it. And so that's really when it started to have a rebirth from the old days of mesmerism and all. And then that's where we came into the picture. Again, after World War II, the entertainment industry had changed so much because of the advent of television, and theaters and so forth were changing. So stage hypnotists were sort of getting out of work, and so they sort of, because they had the experience and knew how to hypnotize, and many of them got into the field of teaching, and they taught not only laymen, but they taught medical doctors and dentists and so forth. So our group got in the beginning of the teaching, and based mainly on their experience. And I know a lot of licensed health professionals who would say, "Well, yeah, I learned my hypnotism from a stage hypnotist," and they're a little embarrassed by it. But that's, nevertheless, that's the way it is. So Dr. Orn, who is well-known as a psychologist and researcher and so forth, medical doctor and PhD, when he testified, he was called in as an expert witness many times in cases involving hypnosis. And one of the things that he had, he had to give his complete CV, curriculum vitae, and so in it he had to mention that he also had been trained by Dr. Rex Fidel North, and who was a stage hypnotist. So I don't know if that sort of embarrassed him a little bit, but nevertheless he became a great researcher and a great name in the field. And he did, in fact, at the time that I was working with Dr. North, Orn and others who became prominent in the field of licensed hypnotherapy did hang out at the Hypnotism Center, take courses and so forth, become part of our group. So it's amazing the way the world moves on. But and we keep moving on with it, and we're very proud of our instructors and proud of our members. And we stress, you mentioned early on about a code of ethics. And we're very, very much into a code of ethics for our members. And we're interested in protecting client welfare, client safety. We have practice limits, what you can do and what you can't do to be within the code of ethics. Advertising, the statement about a person's credentials. And we cover many, many different things. We have an ethics committee, and our ethics committee is composed of 2 ministers, one of our members who has a master's degree in psychotherapy, psychology, and a nurse, and a lawyer, all hypnotists. So we have a very diverse group who are on the ethics committee. And when we get ethics complaint, we don't get a lot of ethics complaints, but when we do, then we do act on it, and we expect people to live up to the ethics and standards of practice of the National Guild of Hypnotists.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the key things we wanted people to hear about. World War II gave doctors, medical professionals a chance to see firsthand what hypnosis can do, and then from there you continued to expand and grow the guild and standardize practices, and you spoke about the training. The training availability is awesome. So we have this strict code of ethics, and if there's anyone out there thinking of joining a guild or being a hypnotist, how do the other organizations measure up to what you're doing? Because I know NGH is the gold standard.
Well, I can't really comment on other organizations. That would
no, I didn't mean by name, just in general.
That would be ethical. We just talked about ethics.
Okay, I apologize. I withdraw the question.
As far as I'm concerned, there's one organization that is predominant, and of course I'm prejudiced because I happen to be president of that organization. But I've devoted my time and energy for all these years to the National Guild of Hypnotists, and much of my experience. Let me just say this: somewhere along the line, I also attended chiropractic college after I got out of the service. I was in college at Emerson College in Boston. Then I served in the Coast Guard during the Korean conflict. I was in the Coast Guard I thought I was going to be in the Navy, and I ended up in the Coast Guard, which was all right. And I thought I would, I had picked out that I would be a journalist because they have journalists in the Coast Guard, in every service. And I ended up being a radio operator, so you don't always get what you want. But it gave me an opportunity to be in various places, and the fact that I had been a professional stage hypnotist was really great in the service, because no matter where I went, I was in demand to do shows. You got that hypnotist on board your ship, can he come over to the officers' club, and so forth and so on. And so I did a lot of shows in various ports, and that was always good, kept me sharp that way. And by getting around, I would visit other hypnotists, such as in New York City and so forth. So everything works along together. And then when I got out of the Coast Guard, I had the GI Bill, and I thought, well, why don't I just go back to college? Because I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. I was married and we had one child. Actually, we had 2 when I finally did decide. And I looked into the different healing arts and so forth, and I said, well, I thought chiropractic certainly looked like a very good field to get into. You didn't have to cut people. You didn't have to give them shots. You didn't have to give medicine. It was, just a wonderful way of healing. And I never had gone to a chiropractor, but I decided to enroll in chiropractic college, and I did. And so off we went to Davenport, Iowa, and I became a licensed chiropractor in the state of New Hampshire. Had a clinic here for, 30-some years. And small town, and, so I was very busy and enjoyed that. But I've always been doing a lot of things at the same time, multitasking before they invented the word. And I'm just not a person who can be just doing one thing. And, I tell people I never had a job in my life because I always enjoyed what I was doing, so it was never a job.
Never a job, right.
No?
And that's what counts.
That's a good way to look at it.
I never gave up my show business connections. During the time that I had the chiropractic clinic, I also had a television show for almost 20 years and as a children's entertainer. And so I really have enjoyed everything I have done and all of the people I've met. Well, there are a couple people I didn't enjoy, but that's life, isn't it?
How did you use hypnotism in your chiropractic practice?
Well, it was really very easy. Of course, when I first opened up, I was in a town of less than 1,000 people, and being a chiropractor and a hypnotist, it was a matter of they wanted to wait to see if I killed anybody with the patient. You know, are they going to die? And in a small town, they know who's going to the chiropractor / hypnotist, and it was. And everywhere I went, of course, if I went to get gas, they knew, you know. And so I had to get results on both. And being, once I was established as a doctor of chiropractic, it was very easy to work with my patients with hypnosis because they already had confidence in me if I'd help them with their chiropractic problem. And so it was just a natural way to fit the two together and go from there. But, you know, most people don't realize that you're in hypnosis, you're in and out of hypnosis all day long. Right. You might be watching a show on TV or a play or something, a musical event, a baseball game, and you're so entranced by it that when your partner says, oh, it's time to eat, you don't even hear them. And you see this even with children watching cartoons. You can walk back and forth in front of them several times, and they don't even notice you because they are focused in on the television. We might drive from, you're in the Bay Area, you might drive from there to a suburb outside, and you go through a couple of small towns on the way, and you get there, and you don't remember going through the small towns.
Right.
But you drove all right. And so, you see, you're in and out of hypnosis all day long. So it's a natural occurrence. But being able to utilize it, being able to go to a certified hypnotist, a consulting hypnotist who knows how to show you how to utilize that innate ability that you have, that tool that we all have, is very important. Because most of our practitioners, I'm sure you folks are the same, also teach our clients how to use self-hypnosis. And it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And there's so many times that you can use it in your life. You can use it to go to the dentist, and you say, well, I don't think I can ever have a dentist drilling on a tooth without having Novocaine or gas or something. But you can. And I had a dentist not too long ago say to me, well, I'm going to have to give you something in that area. It's a root canal job. And I said, how many years have I been coming to you? He said, well, I don't know, 20 or so. I said, have you ever given me Novocaine or anything before? He said, no. I said, well, I don't need it. He said, no, but I do, just in case you change your mind halfway through. So I said, well, all right, it makes you happy, makes you feel safe that I won't jump out of the chair and punch you out or something, go ahead. But I really, as far as I was concerned, I didn't need it, and I don't like the feeling afterwards of walking around with my face hanging down the rest of the day. So, but it is something it's a natural ability we have, an innate ability, and our hypnotists simply know how to act as a coach, how to put you through the proper steps to achieve what it is that you want to do through the use of hypnosis. And it's amazing the number of people, in the book I mentioned a lot of well-known people who are hypnotists. You wouldn't think of Florence Henderson, perhaps, as being a certified hypnotherapist, but she is. Mm-hmm. That's Florence Henderson from the Brady Bunch and TV and Broadway and famous star. And she was married to John Kappas, who has a large hypnosis school out there on the West Coast. Now his son has it. Let's see, Lana Turner was married to a hypnotist. One of our hypnotists that nobody knew about was also a famous TV star quite a few years ago. Some folks might remember the Jerry Mahoney show with Paul Winchell, the ventriloquist. Well, Paul Winchell was also a certified hypnotherapist and invented an artificial heart, and then he donated the patent and so forth to a college and medical institute for their use. So there have been a lot of people who have gone into the field, have made a study of what we do, and right now there's a star out in Las Vegas on the Strip, one of the top shows out there, who in his book tells, his biography tells about how hypnosis and self-hypnosis helped him to move ahead in his life, his personal life and his professional life. And he's not a hypnotist, but he has used the concepts and the ways we do things to become successful. And that's Terry Fader, who won the $1 million contract, ventriloquist. Great act. And so on America's Got Talent.
Oh, yeah,
so
we know.
We watched that.
Yeah, and I think he's at the Mirage. I saw his show. Great show, by the way.
Yeah.
And I got a kick out of reading the book afterwards and saying, wow, you know. So it's natural, and that's the great thing about it. There are no side effects. People say, well, am I going to get, if I'm hypnotized, what if I don't wake up? Well, you don't go to sleep, so you don't have to worry about that. Will I tell my deepest, darkest secrets? No, it's not a lie detector. And so all of these things are myths that come from the movies and TV and books.
Right.
And it's really just a normal, natural state. So if people can utilize it, and the best way, of course, is to go to somebody who is a practitioner who then can guide you and help you to do what it is you want and to achieve what you want through the use of hypnosis.
Right. We don't let anyone leave without having learned self-hypnosis. Our goal isn't to have people come in and keep paying us money. We want to teach them to be their own expert hypnotist.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. A lot of people will come in and say, well, I've tried tapes and CDs and I just fall asleep, or I have this problem or that problem. And it's much easier. Those are wonderful products, but it's much easier for people to use them appropriately and get benefits from them if they go to a professional setting first.
Well, it is, and there's plenty of information available. There's referrals available. In fact, people can always contact the National Guild for a referral in any area. We're in 73 countries. We have members in 73 countries. Wow. And but if they call up and they're in the Bay Area and they want where you are and they want referrals, we give them. Usually, what we do is give them 3 or 4 names, and then they can call and decide on who they want to go to. Right. And they can contact us. Our website is easy, NGH, National Guild of Hypnotists, NGH, at ngh.net. So, it's very, very easy to get hold of us, and we have people here who can give them information. We send, if somebody is interested in training, they can call us, and we have what we call an info kit, INFO, and we send that out, and it's, gives information about getting training as a hypnotist. I have to be careful how I say that. I said that to a woman on the phone one time, a lady from New York. I said, well, tomorrow morning I'll have them send out an info kit. She said, I'm not a nympho. And I said, no. Info, I-N-F-O. There was a little bit of a language problem, I guess. So I'm careful about how I say that now. I don't want to.
I would really like to hear a real short, because hypnosis is a mystery for people out there. You talk in your book about the art, science, and philosophy of the practice of hypnotism. And I think it would be really interesting for you to break that out, tell the difference and what that means to you.
The art of hypnotists, as professional hypnotists, we're concerned with getting maximum results from each and every client who comes into us. And so that is part of the art of knowing intellectually and practically how to do the right thing for the client. And that comes with the training, proper training, hands-on training, not somebody who just read a book. And right. the philosophy of hypnosis, and this is all very short so we can get fitted in the time, is that the mental and the physical well-being of each client is the prime requisite of our members who are ethical and professional hypnotists. And so we have to always maintain a strictly professional relationship with a client. And that's very, very important in what we do. And if people are uncomfortable, they go to somebody who's not a National Guild hypnotist, or even somebody who is, for that matter, but I doubt it, and they don't feel that that person is acting in an ethical manner, then they should discontinue going to them. And, and if they have a complaint, they should let us know about it.
Right.
And see what else? Oh, the science. Well, of course, we're still in the phase of building the scientific part of it and being able to prove and so forth. But there are other professions also, such as chiropractic, where there really hasn't, it's something, yes, it works. We don't know exactly why. We have our theories and so forth and so on, but we also know what electricity is. We know how it works, but we're not really sure of being able to give you a strict definition of what it is. So professionalism is the big thing as far as the art, science, and practice of hypnosis.
And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me as a guest.